Did I ever tell you the story of the trip that we took where I forgot my passport? Yep, I left it face down on a printer, you know, so it's all nicely hidden and you completely forget it's there, and then you walk out the door and you drive 5 hours down the road and then you realise you haven't got it, and then you have to tell your husband, and then you have to turn around and drive 5 hours back and then 5 hours back again. You can imagine the happy atmosphere in the cab. Yeah, it wasn't my finest moment. It was, yeah. We try not to talk about it too much, so hopefully he won't ever watch this video and it won't remind him of the time that I forgot my passport. There's also the time when we ended up in France on a bank holiday weekend, and I thought he bought gas, he thought I'd bought gas, neither of us had bought gas, and we couldn't get any gas for about 3 days in March. It was freezing. It was also, coincidentally, I'm sure, the last time that our daughter decided to come on a really long trip with us. It was cold and it was miserable. The point of sharing these embarrassing stories, other than for your sheer entertainment, is to show you that if you have a pre-trip checklist or a departure checklist, whichever way you want to call it, then working your way through those is going to help save you from having these embarrassing stories of yourself. If you do have any embarrassing stories of yourself, by all means, drop them below, because I want to hear them so I don't feel quite so silly all on my little lonesome. So please tell me about all the time you've forgotten something or someone and made a bit of a muppet out of yourself. Please? Pretty please? Thanks. Hey guys, it's Kat from the Motorhome travel website Wandering Bird, where we share tips and tricks for touring the UK and Europe by motorhome and campervan. Now, I know a lot of people are planning trips in the very, very near future, which is exciting. And what I thought would be useful is to go through checks that you need to do on your van when it has been stood for a while. Or if you're new to your van and you don't know what you're looking for before you go out on your first trip. So I thought I'd go through both your interior and your exterior jobs that you need to do. Before I get started, you can grab your free departure checklist, which is a printable PDF checklist of pretty much everything I'm going to be talking about in this video. I'll leave the link to that in the show notes. And if you're new to this video and you'd like to get more motorhome tips, then by all means hit subscribe and the little bell and you'll be notified when our next video comes out. I'm just changing I've just noticed that this pillow is wonky and I'm going to change it because it's doing my head in. Now there are two types of checks that you need to do. You've got your what I call the pre-trip checks. Try saying that 3 times quickly. And those are the checks to make sure that your van is safe and roadworthy and ready to go in a general sense. Once you've done those, you've then also got your on-the-day departure checklist, which are things like checking that all your lockers are locked and securely shut, and that, you know, the dog's secured and all of this stuff, so that when you actually head out on that day, things aren't going to go flying everywhere and you're not going to cause all sorts of chaos. So I look at those as 2 different checklists. A lot of people look at them as one. It's entirely up to you how you do it. But we like to do our pre-trip pre-trip checks a few days before we actually plan to go, just in case we do find any problems. We've got some time to fix them. So in this video we're going to be covering those, the pre-trip checks that you can do at any time, and this list applies to whether you've had your van for 5 minutes or 5 years. It's the same things that you need to check every time before you go out on the road, especially if you've not used your van for a long period of time. Most of these can be done in any order, with the exception of obvious things like turning on the gas before you check if the gas works and filling up your water tank before you check if your water system works. Pretty much everything else can be done in any order. I would recommend that you leave your cleaning until last in case you need to do any fixes or repair work or anything like that. But if you're planning on cleaning your carpets or planning on cleaning your seats, then I would definitely do them at least a few days before you plan to set off so that they've got time to dry. Okay, let's get going. What are we doing, Punk? It's about to rain, isn't it? We all know it's about to rain. Let's try and get through this as quickly as possible. Okay, so, one motorhome. If you've not been anywhere near your van for a while, the first thing you need to do is give it a visual inspection. So you're just going to be walking around looking for any signs of damage, of leaks. Make sure you look up, I don't know what's going on with those planes. I think they're having some sort of dogfight. So you just want to keep having a wander around and looking for anything that might be a problem. Now's also the time to check all your lights. You want to be checking your brake lights, your indicators, your reversing light. I could be very clever and get a broom or something to push the brake light on to show you what a brake light looks like, But I'm going to go with the fact that you guys can figure out what I mean when I say check your lights. If, like us, you have something on the tow bar or you're going to be towing a lot, make sure that you check the lights on the tow bar attachment or on the trailer as well, so that, you know, they all work for you. What some horrible birds done to our wing mirror. Honestly, ridiculous. Talking to which, while I'm here, if you haven't already got mirror guards or wing mirror protectors, they are fantastic. Admittedly, this one is manky and needs cleaning out, but they're just brilliant and they just clip on, she says there. And if you haven't got them, I highly recommend that you get them. I'll put the link in the notes for you. If you installed vent covers for the winter, or either for your fridge, then now's the time to take them off. We haven't used them, I'll be honest, but if you have got them, remember to take them off. Next thing you want to do is check your gas. So first of all, you're going to be looking for any loose hoses, any damage, anything that's obvious why you shouldn't actually start your gas system. Then you want to be looking at the levels. Now we've obviously got refillable gas flow bottles, but if you've got exchangeable bottles, you can still check for the levels. They have these little level indicators. Admittedly, they're not amazing, but they are better than nothing at all. Or just pick the bottle up and shake it and you can have an idea on exactly how empty it is. And then what we do is we turn the system on, and you hear that huff of air as I turned it on. You'll always get that. So don't worry about that. What you're going to be worrying about is once it's on, you need to listen, as she says as soon as I shut up. You need to listen for any signs of gas escaping or anything like that, and also smell. Now don't forget that LPG sinks, it's heavier than air, so you want to get as low as possible. So listen for a few seconds now, and then come back in a few minutes and see if you can smell any gas or indeed hear anything then. So we're going to go and do other things and then we'll come back to this. Hello. Hello. Now trying to do this one-handed is going to be fun. So bear with me if it wobbles a little bit. So basically, first thing you do is clear out all of this debris. Now we're parked under a tree, which is a really stupid plan. But you want to make sure that all of your debris is cleared out. I'm not going to do it now because I'm put something under here to make sure that it doesn't all drop into the engine bay. All your drain holes are cleared. All of that stuff that isn't going to cause you any issues with any water or rain that you get. Then you're going to give your engine bay a visual inspection. So again, you're looking for things like hoses that are loose or cracked or damaged, or anything that just looks like it's going to cause a bit of a problem. Then you want to be checking your oil. I'm not going to check it now because again, one-handed, all you're going to see is the camera flying away. You've got your coolant, you've got your screen wash, which actually looks like we're going to need some. And if you do use AdBlue, then with this van obviously doesn't, but if you do use AdBlue, you need to check the levels of that. Whilst you're checking fluids, then it's also a good time to check your fuel levels and make sure that you've got enough fuel for your trip. Okay, let's talk about tyres and wheels and brakes and discs and pads. The first thing that I want to point out is make sure that your tyres, especially if it's a new van to you, have got this CP on the end. That means camper. And that means that the tyres are strong enough to withhold a motorhome or a camper van. If you don't have that, which our very first motorhome didn't have that, you're going to get into all sorts of trouble. And we have discovered that some less than scrupulous dealers or private sellers who perhaps didn't know any better have sold vans without the correct tyres on, or they've just put normal car tyres on because they're cheaper. So make sure that your tyres have got CP on them all, and then you're looking at things like tread, wear. If it's been stood for a while, you're looking for any bulges, any flat spots, anything that could cause the tyre to be misshapen and then cause you issues once you drive. Then you also want to visually inspect your brake pads, she says, trying to get in there, your discs, if you know what you're talking about. I'll be honest, if it was just me on my own and my husband wasn't around, I would be taking my motorhome in for a quick service before we went, especially if it's been stood for a few months, because I haven't got a clue about brake pads and discs and all of that stuff. But if you know, or you are lucky enough to be married to somebody who does know, then give them a visual inspection. But again, if you're not sure or you're worried about something that you find, then please do take it in and get a professional to check it before you start driving. Right, so it's been a few minutes. I'm just going to have a listen and a smell while we're here. Nope, nothing. One thing I forgot to mention the first time actually is once you turn your gas bottle on the first time, you might need, I don't think we've got a surge thing on here, But certainly on exchangeable bottles, you'll have a little thing just on the top of the pipe that you have to push up a few times, and then this is your anti-crash button. So you might want to press that, and what that does is if you have an accident, that stops anything bad happening. If you don't have one of those on your system, A, get one fitted as soon as you can by a professional, but also you therefore can't use your gas at all when you're driving, because if you have an accident it'll go horribly wrong. But you might find that for some reason it's tripped over a winter, or if it's not been used for a while. So if you do turn your gas system on and it doesn't work, that's a possible reason why. Other outdoor jobs that you might want to do, if you have a spare tyre, we don't, we've got a tyre repair kit, but if you have a spare wheel, I should say, normally that's kept in a cage underneath your van. If you have got one, A, take it out and visually inspect it, but also make sure that you lubricate the cage itself, because there have been many stories of it rusting or seizing up, so that when you actually do need to get it, you can't open the cage to get the wheel out. So make sure that you keep that lubricated and check it out, make sure that no stones or anything flicked up and cause damage to the wheel itself or the tyre. If you are lucky enough to have a garage or outdoor lockers, now's a really good time to organise them, check them. You're going to be looking for things like damp or any leaks or wet patches which might be inside. You've got to figure out where they've come from. So give all those a good clean and a good check at the same time. If you carry a generator, and I did a video on that fairly recently, but if you do choose to carry a motorhome generator, then now's a good time to get it out, service it, check that it starts up. If the van is shaking, I'm really sorry. He's getting frustrated with the fact that I'm not throwing the ball. But now's a good time to get all that checked out and sorted. And one of the last jobs we do is once we've washed and cleaned the van, which as you can see definitely needs doing, is we put a coat of Rain-X over the windscreen, which helps just repel the water a little bit, makes it a bit easier to see. So that might be another job that you want to consider as well. If you are going away soon, which I'm guessing you are if you're doing your pre-trip checks, then hey, I'm getting better at saying that, then fill the water tank and start checking on the water system as well. Now, if you don't store your motorhome or your campervan at home, you're going to struggle getting water before you get to a campsite. So you might not be able to check your water system. A couple of things just to remember whilst we're talking about water is if you drained down the system for winter, there's a very high chance that you left your water drains in the open position. So whether that's your freshwater tank dump valve or your grey waste dump valve, they're probably both still open. So make sure you shut them. And the other thing to remember is if you've got a boiler dump valve, then that might well be open as well. So make sure that you close that so that when you do put water in the system, it doesn't all come out the other end. So if you do have water at home, fill your system up, make sure you've shut all the valves, and then you're going to be looking underneath the van for any leak. Also, you might want to flush through your tanks, and that's a really good idea, especially if it's either new to you or if it's been stood for a while. Now, we always say empty your tanks before you put it into storage or don't use it for a while, because if you leave water in your system, it can go horrible. But you might want to just clean and flush everything out anyway. So there are, and again, I'll leave the links below, there are several products that you can use that are safe to put in your fresh water tank, and then you can leave that to sit overnight, and then it will all clean it through for you. Same for your grey waste, which is really good. It helps stop it smelling and anything, because obviously bits of food go down there, so you want to be able to clean that all out and make sure that nothing gets stuck or smelling. And whilst we're on the subject of cleaning toilets, you can get some Thetford cassette toilet cleaner, and there's a couple of other brands available as well, where you put water into your cassette, obviously assuming your toilet cassette is empty, put water in it, put one of these tabs, or there's some liquid versions in there, and then you leave it overnight ideally, and then it will all be nice and clean for you in the morning. Recommend leaving all of those overnight, and it gives a really nice good clean. And if you can agitate it, which is hilarious, they say agitate it to give it a good clean. Well, I don't know what you're supposed to do. Maybe put the dog in with a ball and then the whole van will shake and it will be agitated quite nicely. Or you could just jump up and down a few times and see if you can get it going. But those are all really useful jobs to do to clean through your water systems, and then empty it all, and then fill up your fresh water tank with the water that you're going to be drinking. What do you mean no? What do you mean? What do you mean no? Seriously? Give me the ball. Well, that was stupid. Okay, let's talk about the boring paperwork side of things, because there are a few things that are really useful to check, especially again if you've not been out on the road for a few months. Firstly, check that your motorhome insurance is in date. It's amazing how quickly it just suddenly comes around again and you realise that it needs to be renewed. Secondly, if you sawned your vehicle for the winter or for a period of unuse, then make sure, is unuse a word? Disuse? not being used. Anyway, to make sure that you unsawn it and start paying the tax again for it to be back on the road and legal. Also check your MOT, because again, that's something that's easily missed. Make sure that the vehicle is legal to be driven. A couple of other things that are also useful to check your driving license, make sure that hasn't expired for some random reason, and also check your breakdown cover, make sure it's still in date, it's still valid, and make sure that you keep the details to hand just in case you need them. Fingers crossed you don't. If you're travelling with a pet and you're planning to go overseas, which might not be relevant right at this precise moment in time, but in the future, if you're planning on travelling with a pet, again, I've done a whole big video on what you need to do with that to make sure that you get the appropriate paperwork sorted and you've got it with you. Right, that's all the paperwork done. Now let's have a look at inside jobs. So we've spoken about cleaning. The other type of cleaning job that I will do inside is I'll wipe out all the lockers, all of the cupboards and the fridge, and give the oven a bit of a clean down as well before we start, especially if they've been stood for a few months. It's amazing how dusty they get. So I would give all of them a bit of a clean. And again, once you're inside each locker, you want to be looking for damp spots, damage, especially if you're in a locker that's got like a hose or cable or something in it. Just have a look as you're cleaning and make sure that there's nothing that looks visibly damaged. Make sure that there aren't any rodents or creepy crawlies which have used your van for its winter home. Let's hope there's not, but if there are, you need to get rid of those, obviously, and then make sure they haven't caused any damage once they were in there. Okay, let's talk about electrical things. So the first thing you want to be looking at then is your motorhome leisure battery. Now, our leisure battery is actually under our driver's seat. I'm not going to go through all the rigmarole of getting it out because it's a pain in the backside. But if you haven't used your van for a while, you want to visibly inspect your battery, make sure that there's no corrosion on the terminals or anything like that. And then also you want to be looking at your motorhome control panel and making sure that there's some sort of charge and that everything's all right with it. Okay, so if like me you're being lazy and can't bother to actually get the motorhome leisure battery out, although I do recommend you do that every now and then just to make sure nothing is corroding. One way that you can check it is by looking at the motorhome control panel. And I apologise if this is moving a little bit, but I'm having to hold the camera up above my head just to get to it. What we're looking at here is we've obviously got the leisure battery selected. If we press that, you can see that it's the vehicle battery is selected. And then you see at the front, it's got leisure. The flashing symbol with the sun shows you we've got solar charging. And if I flick up, you can see that got solar. The solar to vehicle is giving us, it's not giving us a lot because it's not a particularly nice day, but it is giving us something. If there was an issue with the battery or the solar system or something, that would pretty much be consistently 0. And it is supposed to fluctuate that much. That's normal. So if I just flick through some of these other settings on there, you can see vehicle solar charging again. But actually it said then, if I left it for a second, vehicle battery good, vehicle solar charging. So it just gives you a little indication on whether you've got issues with your battery. That's the sergeant unit, system settings we're not going to go into, and the heater settings, and that's the dimmer levels. Tank heaters are off. And then that's how I selected the battery in the first place. Next job is check your fuse box. So you're just looking for any signs of issues. If you saw our video about when our motorhome fuse box caught fire, you'll see exactly the kind of issues that I'm looking for. But you're just making sure that, hello, he's lost his ball. Oh no, we're going to go find that in a minute. You're just making sure that there aren't any obvious signs of the fuses melted. And then the other thing, especially if your van's been in storage for a while, you might find what some of these switches have either flicked off or you perhaps tripped them off. So you want to make sure that they're all in the up position before you use them. If you've got anything like the fridge that isn't working, can't figure out why, it might be something has tripped either on a fuse that's blown or on one of these RCD switches which have tripped. So that's always worth remembering to check. If for any reason you do need to turn it off or it was turned off at the mains, then that's the button that you use to just start up the whole system again. Next thing to check is the heating. Now, again, I haven't got any water on the van, which would be this one here if I wanted to get to it. I just flick the dial across. But obviously I haven't put any water in, so I'm not going to try the hot water. But the heating, which is this little symbol here, I can test. Now, again, we've got our mains plugged in, so we can either use mains heating or we can use gas. Unlike the fridge, the heating doesn't automatically select it, so you have to do that. So first thing we're going to do is turn on the heating. You can see the little gas flame above it has just kicked on. It's going to use the gas. If you go over to the source, which is this one here, you can see it's got electric, and then we're going to put it onto gas. So we're going to leave that for a few minutes, make sure it all gets warm, make sure that everything's working okay with it. Okay, next job is the fridge. Now, turning the fridge on is fairly straightforward. You've got your on button, and then you've got the 3 different types of it. Now that means auto, that means it's running on battery. Where it will only run on battery when the engine is running. The fridges are generally too powerful to run just off your battery without any additional form of oomph, technical term. So if it's not, the engine isn't running, it won't run on the battery. Then you've got your gas, and then you've got your electric. And ours run so that it will always choose the electric first, because gas is really power hungry on a fridge. And then obviously you can set your temperature that way. And if there is an issue, say for example we haven't got the electric cable in and the gas dies and the engine isn't running, it will start beeping a warning for us. So what we do now, we've turned it on and we want to be making sure it gets cold. The other thing you might want to realise is this little switch here, or flick, which we've pulled out so that the door stays ajar. Give it some air, push that back so that when the fridge locks, the door shuts properly. And you just want to leave that to get cold for half an hour or so, and just make sure it actually does. I'm going to turn it off because otherwise I'm going to forget. Next job to do is turn on all the lights. So these are obviously all running on 12 volts, so make sure that they all work. These ones are already on, but if I flick the switch you can see that they're off and then they're on again. And it's always useful, even if you're like us, you've got an electric cable plugged in at the moment, then unplug the electric cable, make sure that they are actually working off the battery and that things are not just relying on the electric cable in case you do want to stay off grid or go any wild camping. Okay, next job is starting the gas, so making sure that all the hobs, the grill and the oven all work. One thing to note, that even if you have the electric start, if your power isn't on, it's not going to start. But first thing we're going to do, you can hear the gas going, make sure that it all lights. Now you do have to hold them in for a couple of seconds, and I would light all of them just to make sure they work. I've got the door open at the moment so you can see how the wind affects them, and then I would do the exact same thing for the hob and the grill as well. It's safe to say they're working, so we can turn them all off. If you've got a gas kettle and you want to make yourself a drink before you go, give yourself enough time for the kettle and the hob to cool down before you start putting pads or mats or tea towels on it. You don't want to be putting them on a hot plate. But just making sure that the gas is working is good enough. A couple of other quick things to check. Check your internet dongle. If you've got one of these pay-as-you-go dongles, if you've not used it for a few months, you might find that the SIM card has expired. It drives me nuts when that happens, because why can't you just pay for it as you use it? But a lot of them, if you haven't used it for a few months, typically 6 months, but if you haven't used it for a while, you might find that the SIM card no longer works. So check that. The other thing to check as well are your emergencies. So check your spare fuses, your spare bulbs. Dog, it's not in here, it's in the field. Check your spare fuses, check your spare bulbs, check you've got your emergency spare pair of glasses on board, and then also check your emergency first aid kit. So paracetamol might have run out or anything like that. Check that anything that has an expiry date hasn't expired and replace it if it has. Now's also a really good time to do your tests on your CO2 detector and on your smoke detector. I'm not going to press the button because nobody needs to hear that sort of loud beeping, but you know how to do it, and if you're not sure, then change the batteries to make sure that it's all good. See, videos like this are really useful for realising that you don't actually know what the heck's going on in your own van. So we used to have a fire blanket and a fire extinguisher. And now's a really good time to check the dates on your fire extinguisher. Fire blankets don't really go out of date, so I know that's there. And we used to have a fire extinguisher down here, but then we've put the jerry can in there and it's moved. And I'm not entirely sure where it's gone. Right, I can feel nice warm air coming out of there. Some of them like that, you can't shut the vents, and then we've got some like in our bathroom where the vent is shut. So, oh, that's lovely and warm. You'll find different places get warmer in different bits, and the bathroom's great because we can use it to dry stuff. So yeah, we keep that nice and open. It keeps the bathroom nice and warm. And that pretty much covers all of the pre-trip checks that you need to do. Obviously you then got on the day departure checks, which I'm not going to cover in this video because it's going to be crazy long. But it's things like making sure that all your lockers internally and externally are locked and secured, that your gas bottles are secured and turned off if you don't have the anti-crash system, that your kids or your dogs or your spouse are secure and in place and have got everything that they need, that nothing's going to rattle or fly open as you drive. All of those things. And again, if you want to grab the checklist that goes through all that, you can grab it and download it for free. The link is below in the notes. I hope you found that useful. If you are planning a trip soon, I hope you have an amazing time. Let me know where you're going. And if you aren't already subscribed, you'd like to see more helpful videos, then by all means hit the button and the little bell and you'll find out when our next video is. Take care and safe travels. Thank you for your time and I'll see you soon. Bye.
We are out. We're talking about a good time. We're chasing every moment, all the good